And we're now joined by 5 of the best instructor and trainers in the industry. I will let you guys work out which one is not in that list at the end of the episode, and you can message me privately and tell me, because it'll be a bit mean to do it publicly. But I am not going to go around and ask them all to introduce themselves, because that seems very long-winded indeed. So I am going to fire a question at them to begin with, which they didn't know I was going to ask. However, I want the answer will be a number, and I want no context. So the question is going to be, if you took a standards check tomorrow with one of my students, what score would you get? That's the question. And all I want is a number, no context. So we're going to start this one the same way we're going to start the first proper question, and we're going to start with Chris Bensted. So if you took a standards check tomorrow, what score would you get?
46.
46. Neil, what score would you get?
49.
49. Emma?
45.
45. Who's next? Lee?
48.
48. Phil?
46.
46. And Bob?
51.
51. I am fascinated by those answers and so annoyed that I said we're not going to put context on them. I sense a second round coming up at some point. So, in a second...
To be fair, I was going to plumb for 48 to 51, but I thought, nah.
I did phrase it specifically asking what you'd get rather than asking what you're capable of, because I'm sure you're all capable of 51. So I like the answers. I like the honesty. I'm really annoyed we're not putting context on because we haven't got time. But I'm going to come with the first question in a second, and we're going to do them in the same format. So I will fire them at you. You guys have 60 seconds to answer. You should be able to see the clock when I put it up on my screen. If you run over 60 seconds, I will mute you. There are some people that will get on better with this than others, I believe. But we're going to do the same circle of people initially, and then that will change each time. So, question number 1. Should the 3 strikes and you're out rule apply to the standards check? Should the 3 strikes and you're out rule apply to the standards check? So, first up, Chris Bensted.
I knew you were going to do that. Yes. Although there isn't a 3 strikes and you're out rule, they only have to give you 1. They do it as a courtesy, which I always think is important to remember. But yes, absolutely. We're about improvement and education in the industry. So we should all be able to improve and be given the opportunity. It also allows for nerves because, yes, we get nervous and we have to deal with that. So absolutely.
Seconds. Wow, we're off to a flyer. Okay, Neil, same question to you. Should the 3 strikes and you're out rule apply to standards checks? And your 60 seconds starts now.
Yeah, I believe it should be 3. Everybody does get nervous and probably falls down on 1, maybe 2. But if you're not doing enough training, you're going to fall down and lose all 3. So it is a generous thing that they give us 3. So we should really be using 1, but no more than 1.
I like it. Everyone is, well, say everyone, they're both in agreement so far. Next up, we're going for Emma. So same question. Should the 3 strikes and your out rule apply to standards checks?
Yeah, I agree with it as well. Most industries have got some sort of like key performance indicator system, no matter where you work and what you do. So I think with us, we've got a really big duty of care to the road and road safety. And if it gets to a 3rd attempt, then we've got to start questioning, what's going on. I do believe that it could be different. I do think there should be some sort of thing brought in where we've got to prove that we've done some sort of training in between. We can literally rock up for all 3 and not be no different. So I think there should be some sort of training, compulsory training brought in somewhere, maybe between 2 and 3, maybe.
So another one voting for. Lee, let's come to you. Same question. Should the 3 strikes and your out rule apply to the standards check?
Well, it's better than one, isn't it? So, yeah, I think so. I think 3 strikes and you're out gives you time to reflect on the job that you're doing, and gives you time to develop and gives you time to change in between each one. And you can kind of refine how you work in accordance to the standard. I think it's the kick up the ass that we need sometimes. I mean, speaking from my personal experience, believing my own hype and thinking how wonderful I was, and then failing twice. I sort out kind of, Bob is right here. I love you, Bob.
Oh man.
I sort out Bob because I needed to change, not because I wanted to, but I'm now reaping the benefits of that extra training. And my weaknesses were exposed by the 3 strikes. So if you're self-employed, I think you sometimes need to kick up the bum. So yeah.
You're going to take 10 of your seconds to praise Bob every time.
How many seconds was that in total?
You were 50. You were longest one so far. So we're going to go same question to Phil. Should the 3 strikes and you're out rule apply?
Yes. So yeah, I think it's sort of pointless without any consequences. Like, what's the point? You could just keep taking them and failing them. So you need that consequence. And I think also for us to be considered professional as an industry, then there should be a standard there, and that's the DVSA's way of checking our standard. I think I agree with everyone else. It shouldn't get to that point. If you're continuously training and improving, then yes, nerves might kick in on 1 or 2 maybe, but in reality, if you've got that standard, you're going to get there. Interestingly, I don't think it should apply to the Part 3. I think there's enough other restrictions like the 2 years and the trainee license. But that's a different question. I just thought I'd chuck in there because I've got another 10 seconds to talk.
So, well, I must admit, I like the pointless about consequences aspect of it. That's a tagline there somewhere. So you'll be surprised to know that it's you next, Bob, and you'll be surprised to know it's the same question. Should the 3 strikes and you're out rule apply?
Yes, it should. But I was reading on Facebook today, and I think this is key here. Why do we think as an industry that it's not fair? And I've seen a lot of posts today talking about, well, we need our governing bodies to be telling the DVSA what we want. Well, that's a bit of a mistake we're making there, isn't it? We are governed by the DVSA. They are the governing body and they make the rules. And the reason that it seems wholly unfair is because we're just not very good at it as an industry. We don't understand what the standard is that's required. I talk to an awful lot of trainers who have not read the National Standard for Driver and Rider Training. Well, bloody shame on you. We know what it is. They published this information in 2013, and as an industry, we're wandering around with our thumb up our backside and our brain in neutral, unaware of what they're expecting from us. And then we point the finger at them and say, it's just unfair. Great point, Phil, about the Part 3. There you go, 8 seconds left.
Used to be a legend in the industry. Right, so
Can I have my 30 seconds back, please?
No.
Was it not a big name? I thought it was a big name in the industry. You just stripped him of his legendary status as well as his big name status, though.
Used to be.
I can't follow Chris completely, but either way, right. So I do like the fact we've got actually 6 different answers there. You're getting the same answer, but 6 different responses. So I do quite like that. So let's move on to the next question. We're going to start with you this time. Hold on. You this time, Neil. If you were in charge, would you keep the current format or change to something else? So let's start that now. If you're in charge, would you keep the current format or change to something else?
I think I would change it to a standards check every 18 months in alphabetical order, so we all know where the 18 month is, so we can constantly do the training that's required and keep it up, and have some way of marking that. Of the DVSA have got a visual that we are doing that training with whichever audit trainer you're doing it with, or you seek out, or you work with. But yeah, that's what I would do.
18 months standard check. I like it. Okay, so we'll go to Emma. Same question. Would you keep the current format or would you swap it out?
If you was asking me pre-COVID, before it all went a little bit array, I would probably say yeah, because we all kind of knew when it was coming. Whereas now, I think it's not as organised, which is meaning that there's a lot of ADIs out there going, I'm on year 5, I'm on year 6, I'm on year 7, and I've not been checked for a while. So it's leading to that sort of panic. So if it was a little bit sort of more organised and a little bit more regulated in the 1 in 4 as it should be, unless against the new checks. But I think the only thing I would change is that we have to evidence compulsory CPD every year when we do go.
Excellent. Next up, same question to you, Lee. Would you keep it the same or would you change it?
If I was in charge of the DVSA, can you imagine that?
No.
I think they'd see me as a bit of an outsider, so I'd have to go in first day and do something crazy like changing the trigger for serious faults to 0.555 just so they go, he's one of us. But no, I'd keep the format of the new standards check. I think it's way better than role plays and silly things like that. I'd make it a yearly thing with 12 hours of mandatory training in between, so 1 hour a month with a real sort of expert to keep you current and keep you up to date and keep you on top of your game. And I think that'd reduce the number of instructors failing the exam because it'd be harder for their standards to slip. At the end of the day, it's a check of your standards, isn't it? So if you keep them high all year round, then you're not going to be only delivering epic training every day, but you're not going to worry about your standards check. So it'd just be your next time to shine.
Excellent. I'm keeping a note of things that are going to offend some instructors, and the role play not being great is one of them. So yes, this list is growing. I quite like it. Phil, we'll come to you next for this one. Would you keep it the same or would you change it?
Yeah, I think the standards check's a good check and test of what we do. Interestingly, a question later, I found it hard to take anything away from it. So yeah, it's a good test. I think the system works. Obviously, in an ideal, perfect world, we'd have more examiners and we could get tested more, and that would work. 100% agree that CPD should be compulsory. Not necessarily. I don't necessarily agree with the hours. I think it maybe should be you have to give evidence of reflection because not everybody learns in the same way. So I think evidence of how and what you've learned would maybe be a better system. But yeah, I think we need this. I think the system does a pretty good job. We need it there. We're putting tasks like charge of people to be safe on the roads. So we should be taking it seriously, basically.
Excellent. And then we're going to come to Bob. So are we keeping it the same or are we changing it?
I think I'd keep it the same. I quite like the format. And the reason I like it is because it was written by people who understand education. It wasn't written by the DVSA. They had a little team that was together, but it was people first who did it. So the people who understand how human beings learn. I might think about adding some stuff to it. Not sure about CPD in light of recent events, accredited courses. It's a tricky one, isn't it? It's a tricky one. I think you should demonstrate that you're keeping your CPD up, but I don't think the DVSA should tell you who you should do that with. Thinking about the podcast, I've learned loads of stuff listening to the podcast from people who weren't ADIs. What I might add to the standards check is some extra stuff, like mystery shoppers, that kind of stuff. How are we? How well do we deal with customers? How well do we deal with complaints? That kind of stuff. How well do we manage the people that we're helping? I think that would be interesting.
Awesome. Potentially another one that's poking the bear there, which is good. And Grace, are we keeping it? Are we changing it?
I would keep it, but I would add to the 4-year process, and it would stay as a 4-year process. First year theory, so you have to do a theory test. Second year practical, you get your driving tested. Third year would be the current standards check and instructional test. And then the 4th year, free choice CPD, absolutely no restrictions. You can do anything you like. You can go and learn to be a pole dancer, Bob, if you want to. You could do anything you wanted under CPD, as long as you can prove a connection that is going to benefit you as a driving instructor. So
just doing a Google search on sturdy poles.
Get off my 60 seconds. So I would definitely do those 4 things. And Bob gets more time than all of us anyway, because we have to breathe. So that would be my change. I would make it a 4-yearly process with those 4 things in place.
Excellent. I will just chuck in here actually that I'm quite proud of myself with how we're doing this so far, because I must admit there are some podcast hosts out there that couldn't interact with guests this way because they would have to get their own opinion across every 30 seconds. So this is fun. Let's move on to keeping with the theme of poking the bear. Let's move on to the third question, and you are going to kick off this one, Emma. So if you had to remove or add one competency from the standards check, what would it be? So remove or add one competency, what would it be?
Can I have change one instead? The one I have a bugbear with, I suppose, is Comp 16, maintaining a non-discriminatory manner. Now I get it that we can't go around banning certain groups of cars or people that drive certain vehicles in that way. I get that. And I also get that we can be, we've got to be really sort of maintaining that. But for me, this is more about, I would change and adapt that question to be how we create the environment within the car that affects the environment outside the car. And what I mean by that is that how we deal with our individual learner and how we present ourselves and create that environment should be non-discriminatory anyway. So I would adapt it to the question being more about the environment that we create.
The first one to hit the timer.
You get marked down for wearing shorts.
Who would get marked down for wearing shorts?
Anyone?
No.
Yes.
I'm wearing shorts right now. It can't be seen.
We're not marking you down for it, don't worry.
It's too hot.
Although I know which competence to get you on for my standard checklist now, so thank you for that. This is a secret ploy to tackle who wants to come on. All right, so this time we're going to Lee. So let's tweak this slightly. So you can remove, add, or change one of the competencies. What are you going?
Funnily enough, I'm going with Emma's one as well. Did the trainer maintain an appropriate, non-discriminatory, blah, blah, blah. Not because I think it's worthless, but because I'm a bit of an idealist. And in 2023, why does that need to be there? Like, if you have to be told that it's not okay to, don't lurch over your young female driver, or it's not okay to comment on someone's sexual orientation or how they identify, or make sure you don't air your views on Muslim taxi drivers. It's like, if we need to try and not do that, then why are we on the register in the first place? Because if you still think any of that's all right, then you need a different type of check, like a reality one.
There's a different register for those people.
Yeah.
Moving swiftly on. Phil, remove, add, or change one of the competencies.
So I'm not going to take any away because I do think it is. I read through every single one and I thought, no, I can't take any of them away. And also, they interlink so massively as well. So I think you can't necessarily take one away without taking another 3 or 4. Or the ones the guys have mentioned, actually, you probably could. It doesn't necessarily interlink with any of the others. I'm going to add one. Did the trainer incorporate levels of the GDE matrix to aid the learning towards safe driving for life? Just thought I'd put a little DVSA tagline in there. To be fair, it's probably in there in sense of learning opportunities and outcomes and stuff like that, but just making it clear in there. And it kind of goes against the whole trigger system. So we kind of have these two sort of kind of systems, the trigger system making us test focused, and then this and the coaching element of the standards check. So I think I would want it in there to be clear, basically.
Stuff. So we're coming to Bob. You can remove, add, or change one of the competencies.
I love the competencies the way they are because they speak to the way people are educated. Some good points on the non-discriminatory, but I just take out non-discriminatory and it covers it. You know, are you behaving in an appropriate manner? And as Lee has alluded to, we should. But I have a simple one to add, and it sort of ties into the stuff I was talking about before about dealing with customers and being professional. You know, number 18, I would add, has the ADI stroke PDI behaved like a dick on social media in the last month? If so, that should be a trigger.
Be a safety critical one as well. Gone.
We're not trying to reduce the amount of tests.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yes, there we go. More people potentially. Probably the Bears. Okay, Chris, are we adding, removing, swapping, or just leaving alone, I suppose?
I'm on the same page as Phil on this one. I'm going to go GDE based, but I think you could actually get the number of points for the level of GDE that you managed to reach. So yeah, did they ask a question that actually included the learner and their opinion in some way? And I think GDE focus would be a nice way to go, because it might get people having a look at other things. So that would be my approach to it.
Excellent. And then lastly, over to Neil, same question.
Yeah, I think the 17 fit quite nicely. So I wouldn't want to take one away or remove one, but I would just like to add to the bottom of the sheet, and a bit like Emma said before, is a way of recording the CPD so the examiner could see that as well and mark that down. So it's just another, not a tick box, but a way of demonstrating that you do CPD. And that's the way I was thinking. But I do like the GDE bit as well, because that shows that you're coaching as well. So yeah, so it's just add that in for the CPD.
Excellent. Well, I think all the people who are going to be annoying today annoyingly won't listen, which is a bit of an anticlimax. But
They never do.
no. But there's some good ideas here, actually. So maybe we should tag the DVSA in on this. Okay, so we're moving a slight shift now. So we're moving on to sort of standard check itself, to the sort of the practicalities of it. So we're starting with you this one, Lee, and it's how would you prefer? I can't say it. How would you prepare for a standards check? So how would you prepare for a standards check, Lee?
I think a good principle is to sort of always work in a way that you're going to work on your standard check. Like I deal with a lot of people that have they've looked at different ways of doing it, and they're trying to tick boxes, and they're trying to work in a way that's not familiar to how they work every day and under pressure at the same time. So I think, if you work in a way that works successfully and satisfies the competencies, then when you turn up, you're just going to turn up and do what you always do, and you're not separating the standard lesson to what you do every day. I speak to a lot of people that say, "Oh, it's totally different to a normal lesson," and that's usually kind of, I'll read that on Facebook after working 10 hours or something daft, and sometimes I want to reply and just put, "That's because you do it wrong every day," but I don't. If you work in a way that satisfies the competencies every day, then you're setting yourself up for success, I think.
Excellent. So we're going to go over to you, Phil. I know you requested a standards check not that long ago. So how would you prepare for said standards check?
Yeah, so I was going to describe how I did prepare for that standards check. So I think first of all, it starts now, like be training now. So never stop training, never stop getting better. That's how you prepare for a standards check. Don't wait for that letter. Then you choose your pupil and choose your pupil based on rapport and the type of level you like to teach, and then go and deliver a normal lesson with them. That's exactly what I did. I swapped it on the way there. We got my lesson plan completely changed 15 minutes before the standards check because the pupil was making mistakes. So go deliver a normal lesson. I think I'd also, in preparation, normalize having people sat in the back. So get ADIs, trainers, whatever, sat in the back, normalize that. And if not, record yourself, because it has a similar effect on the nerves and being aware of what you're saying.
Excellent. And we're going to go over to you, Bob, now. Obviously, keep in mind that you were the only person that said you'll get 51 out of 51 if you took a standard check tomorrow. So how would you get this 51 out of 51, Bob?
Well, clearly I lied. Yeah, no, what I would do is, it's about understanding the standard. And it's, as Lee said, it's about working the way that you would work every day, as preparation. And I think some of the other stuff that gets overlooked, make sure you've had the right amount of sleep, make sure you're properly hydrated. We don't take care of this ADIs because we don't want to be too hydrated because we need the toilet all the time. But you need to be performing properly, you must be properly hydrated. If you've got a reduction in your hydration level, your ability to concentrate is diminished as a result of it. So understand the standard, work in ways that match that standard every day. It's really quite simple. All you need to do is to just message one of the guys that's on this podcast here, and I'm sure we can sort you out.
Excellent. Chris, we recently did a podcast called The Green Room where we spoke about why does everything have to be standard check based. So on this episode with 6 traders talking about the standard check, how would you prepare for a standard check?
It was the episode in which I solved the DVSA waiting list. So I wouldn't prepare for it. What I would do is make sure that every single lesson matches it, because then I don't have to. My preferred approach is not to know the pupil. I'm not a big believer on choose the right pupil. I will happily turn up to the test centre, as Terry suggested, one of his pupils. I like that. I like rapid assessment. You end up delivering exactly what they need. People plan for it weeks in advance, and you don't know what they need on the day, as Phil suggested. You've got to change the plan. So I wouldn't prepare. I'd make sure I was ready, as in I knew what a good lesson was, because that's all it's about. And I'm probably the only one in the room that can't quote all of the 17 competencies, because I don't care about them enough.
Excellent. And yes, we solved it together, Chris. Not you. We, as a joint effort.
It was recorded.
It's heavily edited, is what it was.
You did the maths for me.
Yes, with a calculator. Neil, now I'm going to ask you the same question, and I'm also going to chuck in there that if only there was some kind of book we could refer to help us with preparation for a standards check.
Yeah, that would be my book, Untwisting the Road to Success, because I believe that when you take a standards check, the day after, the training starts again. Whether you pass or fail, you work down the competencies that you were lowest on, not particularly with a pupil, but with yourself. So you know the national standards around that competency, and you work on that and reflect on that until you feel comfortable that you know what you're doing with that, and then move to the next one. I'm not a big believer that you can remember all 17 at the same time. So you just choose individual ones and work on them till you're better and better with them. And that way you gain a better knowledge of the standards check form as well, and you start to improve yourself.
Excellent. And then finally, we're going to ask Emma, how would you prepare for the standards check?
I think the first thing that come to mind with this was I'm preparing every day, similar to what the other guys have said. So every lesson you're delivering, you're preparing, or you should be. The way Chris goes in, that would be my worst nightmare. So I think it's about knowing yourself as well, because if you give me a quiz of 10 questions and I had a month to learn them and I knew those answers inside out, I would still be nervous going into the test, because that's just who I am. So it's about knowing who you are, knowing and practicing things. Like for me, I know that mindfulness, meditation, all that type of stuff works for me. Hydration, like Bob says, I'm massive on that. I know when I've not had the right amount of water or whatever per day. So I think it's about knowing yourself. And then for us as a team, we actually regularly assess ourselves against each competency. So we have like a team thing where they've got sheets where they'll do a full week of just assessing themselves on one competency as a reflection for that week. So I would maybe do something like that, and maybe get a trusted colleague to review one of my lessons.
Oh, well,
I'm getting good at that, being on the button, Anna.
Yes, we like that. All right, I should have mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to mention it specifically for these next 2 questions. These questions I have intentionally worded quite ambiguously, almost, to leave it slightly to your interpretation. So, question number 5, and we're going to start with Phil on this one. How and when do you decide whether to change the focus of a lesson?
My spidey senses. They start tingling, and so I decide to change something. So I think that is it. You just get a feeling, basically. There's obviously going to be big moments, safety critical instances, something like that you need to change and adapt the lesson to deal with what has happened. But also there's more subtle stuff going on, the pupil doing well or the pupil struggling slightly, that you need to just tweak those dials a little bit, up that level of instruction, change that. So that is still changing the focus of the lesson slightly. So yeah, I think it's just getting a feel, constantly sort of refreshing that idea in my head of is this going well? Like, is this working for the pupil? And also don't set a black and white rule of like whether we have to pull over and things like that, which I hear a lot of. I've got time to explain my reason why, but don't basically.
Here we go. Two people have hit the buzzer now. That was delayed for some reason. All right, cool. So, Bob, how and when do you decide whether to change the focus of a lesson?
Well, there's two sort of main ways that's going to happen. One, a safety critical incident might happen, or two, things just aren't going the way we were expecting. So we should have, before we start any activity, we should have a bit of an idea about what's the outcome we're expecting here. And if we're not getting what we expect, then we need to change what we're doing. So that might be a change in activity, i.e. different level of support, different level of challenge, or it may well be that our learner just isn't at the races today, and we need to just back off and do something a bit simpler. So it's touching on what Phil said, it's intuition. You know, if things aren't working the way you're expecting them to work, you've got to ask yourself the question, do we need to do something different here or do something differently? So it's just, you know, if you're not getting what you expect, change it.
Excellent. I'm just starting to get some feedback, and I think it's either from Emma or Lee.
It's always me, isn't it?
Can you mute yourself then?
Yeah.
And just unmute for your questions. And I'll see if that helps. I'm not getting anything now, so that's good. All right, cool. When I come to you, obviously just unmute us. Otherwise, that wouldn't be great. Or we just had Bob. Yeah, excellent. So we're going to go to Chris with the same question. How and when do you decide whether to change the focus of a lesson?
I'm going to include two different things. So the first one would be chunking the lesson in the first place. So breaking it into probably 10 minutes for me works really well, but that kind of section so that you pause and reflect and go, do I need to change it? Because people get focused, they get fixed time-wise, and they suffer because they're under pressure. So have a timer and a buzzer go off if you need it, but break it into those sections. So not a big, red one, but break it to those sections so that you naturally build in that reflection and potential change. And then the other thing is to look at things like a pyramid. So if you like, you can have a kind of GDE pyramid where you've got your controls and car at the bottom of it and work your way up from there. But if it's beneath what you're doing, so whatever you is going wrong is below that in the pyramid, then you probably need to drop the level and change things.
Love how these answers are starting to fill up them 60 seconds now. It's getting good.
And I've just clocked Terry's top, which is really cool.
Oh, the Star Trek?
Yeah.
Yes, there you go.
It was just a yellow top until you leant backwards.
I'd forgotten it until you pointed it out. Okay, Neil, same question. How and when do you decide whether to change the focus of a lesson?
Yeah, I think it's more intuition. It's just getting that tingle, shall we say, that this ain't quite right or it's going too well. So a big one for me is body language. You know, a lot of things can be said from body language, whether they're uncomfortable or whether this is now starting to be too easy because they're starting to smile and enjoy it a bit more. So then just ramping it up a little bit. So it comes down to various things, and different trainers will use different techniques. But for me, it's just watching the student and watching their body language. And if something does go wrong to start with, that might just be a bit of nerves, and then we might just start to think about changing it then. If it starts to happen again, so 2 strikes and you're out, let's change. Yeah.
Okay, so Emma next. Same question. How and when do you decide whether to change the focus of a lesson?
When the pupil tells me so, and I don't mean as in they're going to tell me that the lesson needs to be changed, but same as what Neil's just said, really, body language. When they change, they might verbalise it, I suppose, but more for me, it's building that rapport enough with your learner that you know them well enough that there's something not right, whether it be because it's now too challenging and things are going wrong for them, or it's easy and they're now showing signs that they're really bored because they're not paying attention to the road anymore because they're bored and what's going on. So yeah, I think it comes down to aware of their actions, how they're behaving, and find out what's going on.
Excellent. And I'm frantically scanning this screen, saying if you guys look bored and if I need to give you some attention, but we're all looking okay so far, so that's good. But we are going to come lastly on this question to Lee. So same question, how and when do you decide whether to change the focus of a driving lesson?
I think, a good principle to use is to always base your focus originally on your learner's kind of number one priority need. And this way, by design, you're flexible rather than working on like a set thing. And if new needs manifest themselves in the form of mistakes that your learner's making, then you need to weigh the new need versus the current focus and decide, is the new need more of a priority than the existing need? And if so, then you can change the focus of the lesson to work on the new priority need. And like if a serious incident happens, then you'll always need to work on that straight away because that's more of a pressing need than the one you were working on before. And if something is reoccurring, then I suppose you've got to ask yourself, can we work on this alongside what we were doing, or is this new thing blocking the pathway for the learner to achieve the original goal? And if so, then work on it alongside what you're doing, or in that case, kind of tackle it first, get it out of the way, and then go back to doing what you were doing.
Excellent. Another one taking the full 60. And I will just say for anyone listening, if you don't listen to the DIPod, which is a driving instructors podcast, it's been going for about 12 years, definitely check it out. I listen to it every month. I've got a lot of time for those guys. However, they should definitely be listening to this section of the show because this is something they argue about every single week. And I think all of those have just clarified it an awful lot better than they do.
Can we just address the fact that Emma doesn't want her pupils to be bored, but Neil doesn't want his pupils to be happy?
It's not like a bit of pressure, Chris.
And me not paying attention and picking it up. Whatever. All right, so we're on to the final question, which is how do you maintain your normal relaxed self while trying to self-monitor your performance against the competencies? I am going to mention this one actually. This is specifically, I forget the person's name, but a specific question that was sent to me. How do you maintain your normal relaxed self while trying to self-monitor your performance against the competencies? We're going to come to you on first on this one, Bob, because I know you always get nervous around this stuff, so you're probably a good person to ask.
I think it's about, and we've all touched on it, about working the same way all the time. So it's having a system that delivers, client-centered learning and just doing that all the time. And if you're working that way, if it's something that's really familiar to you, you're not going to get quite stressed about it. Again, and adding in the stuff about, hydration and getting the right levels of sleep. Learn to become more reflective, I think, is always a help. So you can monitor for yourself, where you're at in the pantheon of things. So it's just working the way you would do normally is not going to make you stressed. And then looking to deal with the stress that you're feeling. How does it manifest itself? And then learning some relaxation techniques to alleviate it. And the NHS website has a fantastic segment on it about dealing with anxiety and stress and loads of little techniques that you can use. So learn what works for you.
Excellent. So same to you, Chris. How do you maintain your normal relaxed self while trying to self-monitor your performance against all of those competencies, including the extra ones we've added on today?
Ignore all the competencies. If people want to know how to do that, get in touch. And yeah, you don't need to. It's making it way more complicated. If you go to the doctor, you go, look, I've got a rash, and you want them to tell you, is it going to kill you or what do you need to treat it? You don't need to know the long technical words and names. It's not important. You just need to know the basics of how to deliver that good lesson. And then the rest of it, down to the DVSA, don't worry about it. If you want the best advice, and this works for every instructor I've ever met, what advice would you give your pupil about their driving test? And do that, because we get paid to sit there and tell you what you would have told your pupil in the first place. So there's enough mirrors in the car. Look in one of them, ask yourself the question. I bet you've got a spot on answer.
Excellent. I love the little bit of self-promotion going on there as well. In fact, I will just say that when we put this up and ask for questions, people submit, there were a few people having a bit of a dig, saying, well, these guys won't want the standard check taken away. They're just after earning money. I'm like, yeah, that's their job. They're here to help, and you are helping a lot today. Maybe I'm going to tag a secret question on the end about that.
You don't have to buy it.
That's the first I heard that we were being paid to be here. That sounds good.
Oh no, no! I will treat you all to a smile. Okay, so Neil, how do you maintain your normal, relaxed self while trying to self-monitor your performance against the competencies?
I think it comes down to a bit of self-awareness. So when I learned to be a life coach, it gave me an insight of being more self-aware and knowing what I was going to do and how I do things. Because normally I would just be a gibbering wreck for 3 days before the standards check, and then 5 minutes before just kick into action. So it's being aware of yourself and knowing what you've got to do. Just deliver your normal lesson so it's running nice and smooth with what you're going to do on the day, and just follow your own intuitions.
Excellent. And Emma, you are someone that is up on all the woo-woo and voodoo stuff. So same question to you.
I've been called woo-woo twice today. But yeah, exactly that. I am definitely going to go down the woo-woo route, because I think that's how I've gone down that route in the first place. It's knowing yourself. If you don't know yourself, how on earth are you possibly going to change things for yourself when things go wrong? So, or when you're put in a situation that is abnormal to your normal day, and this is abnormal to normal day. We are all saying, look, you should be doing your driving lessons like it is a standards check every day, but ultimately you don't have somebody from the DVSA potentially with your livelihood on the line every single day. So it is different. And I think it's knowing that how you're going to be in that scenario, knowing yourself well, and put yourself in that scenario as much as possible. Do mock tests, get somebody in the back of your car if you know that you're not going to, fare well with somebody in the back of your car on that day.
Excellent. And we're coming to Lee with the same question. How do you maintain your normal, relaxed self?
I think we've kind of touched on it already, that I think something we should all do. It's something we should all do all the time. Because I'd say you can't really maintain normality until it is normal, like every lesson, like every day. Until you start monitoring yourself against what you're up against, like the competencies, and it's not normal, and you'll always struggle to do that. So I think, something that Bob talks about is, the human learning cycle, that if you're unconsciously competent at something, then you're going to do it without thinking, and it just happens naturally. So if it becomes part of your normal routine to look how you fared versus the competencies last lesson before your new learner gets there, and then you conduct the new lesson, and then you score yourself against competencies again, and then compare and contrast, and it quickly becomes normal and then more relaxed. But I'd say focus on the key competencies first, because your head can go into a bit of a shed if you're trying to look at all 17 at once.
Good stuff. And then finally to you, Phil, same question.
So I thought about this question slightly differently, in the sense of not during the standards check, but while you're trying to improve yourself. How can you be normal whilst also improving yourself? From a standards check point of view, don't try and compare yourself to the competencies. It's not your job. That's the examiner's job. You just give a lesson. From a point of view of trying to improve yourself, I'm with Chris on this. I don't talk about the competencies while I'm doing training. I talk about delivering a better lesson. To do that whilst also staying yourself and keeping your personality and being normal and relaxed during the lesson, take it step by step. So don't try and fix it all at once. So fix a bit like Emma said earlier about but with one competency, but pick something you're going to get better at this week, questions or self-analysis or setting the goals at the start of the lesson. Just pick one thing and get better at that until it becomes normal.
Excellent. That was the last question. Just before I move on any further, I'm going to take a moment to say to anyone listening, there's some fucking gold right there. Seriously, especially on last 3 questions about the actual practicality of the standards check. Seriously, just save this in your phone. get your standard check coming up. When you find out, well, do it anyway, obviously, as everyone said, prepare, blah, 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 blah. But when you've got your standard check coming up, go back and listen to this again. Doesn't just get my download numbers up, but it'll help you pass a standard check. Really, really good stuff. So, lots of stuff has been said, and I've given none of you any opportunity to come back or retort. So would anyone like 60 seconds to come back, either to respond to anyone or add anything?
I just want to say that I've just noticed that Bob's clock stopped. And I've only just realised.
He thought it'd get him an extra 60 seconds. That's what...
We just sat there thinking, God, the time's dragging.
Yeah, what's going on?
That's why he looks so young.
I mean, I must admit that clock's just beneath where it says I'm recording. And I keep checking it's still recording and seeing the clock and having a slight panic. But... Okay, so no one wants to come back. No
yes, I'll go on.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
60 seconds, go for it.
I firstly want to acknowledge that I didn't think Lee would be the one wanting normality. I thought that was going to be bottom of the list. But yes, I just want to agree with what everybody said, but that we should let the DVSA do their job and we should just all be awesome all the way through everything that we do, every lesson, every day, every pupil. That will do me. 30 seconds was enough. Thank you.
Awesome. Not allowed to use that word. We've had complaints. Anyone else have any retorts or anything like to add on before we move on to the final bit?
I'm just going to steal Emma's little getting her instructors to do one comp a week or one task a week. I love that. So if any of my instructors are listening, sorry. You're about to get worked a lot harder.
I would like to say it's not compulsory to all Phil's instructors. It's not compulsory. It's just something that is given to them.
Most definitely, it's compulsory.
And I'll just give a shout out for Emma and Phil's instructors that if you sign up to the Instructor Podcast Premium, there is a standard checklist where you can go and listen to a breakdown of all the competencies. So, yeah, cheap plug. All right, so the last thing I'm going to get you guys to do, and I'm going to go around in the same order we've just been around. So I'm going to start with you, Bob. I'm going to give you 60 seconds, and you're going to tell us why you are awesome and where people can find you.
Well, I'm awesome because my mum says I am. And people can find me at clientcenteredlearning.co.uk. If you want to look at any of my stuff, it's clientcenteredlearning.co.uk/courses/masterclasses.
Excellent. So we're going to go to Chris next. Why are you awesome and where can people find you?
I'm awesome because Terry keeps having me back. So it's purely down to him. So people can find me all over the place. Chris Bensted, BENSTED, no A, .co.uk. If you're interested in business coaching, improving your business, the ditc.co.uk if you want to find stuff for the industry, theorytestexplained.co.uk if you want help with your theory test, and anything else, just find me on Facebook. I'm happy to chat.
Excellent. Same to you, Neil. Why are you awesome and where can people find you?
So I'm awesome because I'm an individual. And people can find me at Neil Wightman 1 at sky.com or in the Audit Academy on Facebook. And they can use my Untwisting a Road to Success book to keep them ticking along on a daily basis. And then if they need any further training, they can just get in touch with me.
Excellent. Emma, why are you awesome and where can people find you?
I'm awesome because you keep telling me I'm awesome.
That's cool, right?
That's what I'm going with because I never take the praise normally. So you can find me in 3 different places. The driving school is Up Driving School, and people often ask me why, and that's mainly because I'm a big Disney nerd. And it's my favourite Disney film. So that's purely it. So that's updrivingschool.co.uk. I also have the Learner Driver Logbook, and that's the learnerdriverlogbook.co.uk. And if you are into the woo-woo, which is the route I'm starting to go down, you can also find me at Freedom Holistics and Coaching on Facebook and Instagram.
Excellent. And Lee, why are you awesome and where can people find you?
I'm not that awesome. I'm very overrated. But what I'd say to people is that if you're looking for help, then do your study first, read the ADI one, read the, national standard. And then if you want that translating into proper Northern English, then let me know and I can help. So you can find me at adidoctor.co.uk or pdidoctor.co.uk if you're a PDI, and on Facebook and on Instagram and the other ones, just not TikTok. I'm not on that yet. I'm not silly enough to be on TikTok. But yeah, so if you need any help, then let me know.
I have
Northern,
two
you
TikTok
say?
channels.
Proper Northern.
Northern?
Yeah.
We're not having an argument over what's proper North.
Anything north of the Thames.
All right, so Phil, why are you awesome, and where can people find you?
I'm gonna buck the trend and say I don't think I am awesome. I'm chasing awesome. I tend to say chasing excellence actually, but we'll go for awesome today. And I think that makes you awesome because you're chasing awesome, and so you're constantly trying to be better. You can find me at cowleyschoolofmotoring.com, or Facebook, Instagram. I am on TikTok because I am silly enough to be on TikTok. And yeah, I'm happy to help anyone. Chuck us a message. I'm also an admin on Lou's PDI group, so get yourself on there because the other admins are awesome as well, and you'll get support and help that you need.
I think the start of that hurt my head a little bit. But I just want to say that I think you are all lovely and awesome. You've been on the show in one form or another a few times, all of you, and I really appreciate it. And you were my go-to people for this first episode. I think you've all been brilliant. And I said it before, but I think anyone listening to this, like I said, that first half felt very. It was about the format of the standards check, almost the politics behind it, if you like. But the second half, in particular, some real gold there. So yes, we'll definitely be sending that first half to the DVSA, and the second half should be mandatory listening for all ADIs and PDIs. Anyone wanting to give any final comments before we disappear?
I think it's been fun. We should do it again.
Hard work organising you a lot. We've got a group now, though, so maybe we'll just leave this group. Maybe we could just do that. We'll leave this group. Because I was thinking we could do it with different people. We'll swap people in out, but we'll just leave this group and do it once every 3 or 4 months, and we'll see where we go. But no, appreciate it, guys. Thank you for your time. It's great having you on.